Hello, everyone. My name is Stephanie Boozer. I'm with CUGC HQ, and I am so happy to welcome you to today's CUGC Connect with Tricerat. We're talking all about printing and print management, and I know that for some of you that there may be pain points in there, so hopefully we're going to learn a lot today about how to optimize that whole process. Before we get started, we had a little icebreaker poll in the beginning to, let me see if I can share these. Here we go. To find out which baseball team you guys think you would like to have win the World Series this year. And as you can see, I think most of you said it's football season. But interesting breakdown there. Yankees and Astros look like they're tied outside of the other. So thanks for doing that. All righty, I'm going to get us kicked off here. First, before we get started, we have a couple of housekeeping details. You will receive a link to today's recording, and it'll come to you in email tomorrow. And the email will come from GoToWebinar, so be on the lookout for that. Also, there is a chat panel for you to type your questions in at any time. We'll try to get to some, I think, during the presentation and some after the presentation. It just kind of depends on how things come in and what the questions are, but do type them in as you have them. And finally, we'd like you to fill out a quick exit survey. I'll be putting the link in the chat towards the end of the webinar. It's anonymous, it's extremely short, and it is for CUGC use only. All right, so who's with us today? We have Rich Faulkner. He is our Q&A moderator. He is an Oklahoma CUGC leader and a CTP, and he's going to keep an eye on all those questions that you're typing in and give those over to the presenter as we can. So Rich, would you like to say hello to everyone?
Yes. Good morning or afternoon, everybody, and glad you could join us. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Rich. So he'll keep an eye on those questions, as I said, and just type them in as you have them. And also we have Andrew Parlette. He is the CTO of Tricerat. You may have seen him online, and I think Andrew might have been to a couple of CUGC events, but he's going to be giving us our presentation today. So I'd like to welcome him to the webinar. And I think as I'm transitioning the screen over to you, Andrew, you have another poll that you'd like to run. So let me get that queued up. We'll start that, and then I will send you the screen. Okay, here it comes.
Still waiting for the screen.
Oh, okay, it's probably because the poll's up still. I'll give the poll just a few more seconds. People filling out their printing challenges is pretty, looks like so far the top one is driver management on desktops or images. It's like the top three in that order. Give it just another couple seconds and then I'll share the results so you can see them. All right, and here you go. Can you see those, Andrew?
Yeah, so it does look like driver management came out on top, and that's certainly something we hear about all the time, and then kind of a distribution between some of those other ones. So that's good. So we'll talk about some of these things here today when we're talking about ways to enhance printing in your enterprise environments and how we can even extend that out into other environments from both traditional to other kind of hybrid environments. So let me get my screen shared here. And yeah, so just to kind of kick things off here, the topics that we're looking to cover here today that we talked about before the webinar was really just to look at the benefits of a print management solution and some of the opportunities that you have when you start layering in some of these other kind of a smarter management method and product onto your existing enterprise environment. And we'll look at some of the specifics like policy elimination, driver elimination, how these things can really be effective in your environment to really help your administration process, but also just the overall value of the service that you're delivering in your IT infrastructure out to your users. Certainly a hot topic these days is cloud printing, cloud environments in general, hybrid, when we're talking about interactions between cloud and on-prem. We'll talk some about Citrix Cloud, but we'll also talk some about WVD, obviously a hot topic with Microsoft recently announcing the full availability of WVD and their upcoming sessions at Ignite. And then similarly, an interesting thing to look at is mobile printing, and when you're getting requests for when people are using a bit more of your enterprise applications in a mobile way, and then those requests come back for mobile printing, ways that we can extend our IT infrastructure out into that new mobile environment. So to talk briefly about Tricerat and our partnership with Citrix, and certainly our interactions with CUGC over the years. Tricerat's been in business for over 20 years and really focused on printing during that whole time. We came out with screwdrivers in 2001 and have really been pushing to develop the best possible solutions for IT admins around printing, really trying to take the hassles and the pain points away just to make it easier and allow you to focus on other things. So during that whole time, we've been close Citrix partners. In those early days, it was really focused on that kind of Citrix and remote desktop deployment. But then, even today with VDI and physical deployments and all the different types of platforms out there, we've been right there along with Citrix and certified Citrix Ready partners for that time. And just to look at some of those ways that I was just mentioning of ways that can really help enhance the infrastructure when it comes to printing. First and foremost, just that hassle-free printing. So many times, I mean, I saw in the poll question, the driver management came up there in the top, and even those other answers are just things that really can be draining on an IT team. Certainly when you start to look at the scale of some environments and just the amount of time it's taking for whether we're talking rollout and deployment or day-to-day administration or user interaction with the system. So if we can really drive that to a hassle-free scenario where you have the tools in place to easily manage this, that can really be a major value and a major enhancement into that environment. And of course, with that is just that better user and administrator experience. So we're really going to be diving into some of the finer points of this from both sides, as far as ways that admin time can be more efficient and utilized better, but also that the users can have a better user experience as they're logging on, interacting, and getting their access to printing resources. And obviously, anytime we're talking about layering on another piece into your IT infrastructure, this is, an extra product that's going on top of the existing platforms. So we've got to look at the ROI. What kind of value are you getting back? And we'll have some slides where we look at how you can kind of think about that in new ways, and both realize ROI from enhancements to the environment, but just straight time savings. And we'll talk about ways that you can directly see that in effect. And the efficiency improvements, this is kind of underlying all the different things we're talking about here. As an IT admin with so much on your plate every day and so many things that you need to manage throughout the environment, small efficiency gains can really have an impact on that day-to-day management. So we're going to look at ways that can be very impactful in the overall operation of your IT administration. Rich, I know we mentioned at the beginning, but I do want to reiterate that if there's questions throughout, please make sure to put that in the chat window, and we'll address them if they make sense throughout, or certainly we can answer some at the end. So Rich, if you see any of those come in, please let me know.
Yeah, so there's actually a question section where you guys can go in and put in the questions and send them in, and then I'll interrupt and at different points and get the questions answered for you.
Great. So why print management? This is kind of a question that comes up like, printing, it's still something we're talking about. But as I'm sure a lot of you are aware, it still takes a lot of time. It still comes to the forefront a lot more than it should. It would be great if these kind of systems kind of just merge the background. And that's certainly something we're trying to achieve with our solutions, where it just becomes a natural part of the computing environment and not something that requires quite so much attention. But the reality is that in most situations, it really is still a major time drain for administrators and even users when we're talking about calls to the help desk and times printing doesn't work when they need it to. And so we looked at some industry data out there, some surveys that have been done, some of our own data that we've collected, and looked at ways across industries, basically some averages that came out as far as how much printing costs and ways that printing costs, sometimes ways that we don't necessarily think of right away. And so some studies were done that showed somewhere between 1% and 3% of total revenue for a company, like that's total revenue, could be spent on printing costs. And a significant amount of that, there were about a quarter of help desk cases were printing related. When you dig into those data, certainly there's costs with buying printers and paper and toner and those type of things, but you do get into the management costs of admin time. You get into the time on the help desk, productivity loss. All of these type of things factor in. And so on our website, we actually developed a very simple calculator that takes the number of support cases, an estimate of time spent on printing, and using those industry averages. Again, this is an estimate, but we can estimate about, if it's an average scenario, the cost of printing. And then based on studies, it says down there some of our assumptions. If we can reduce that spend by 2/3, it's not going to zero, but we can significantly reduce the amount of money spent once a print management solution is in place, and you can see that difference in the savings possibilities. So when we start getting into ROI and thinking about admin time savings and other productivity enhancements, we can put numbers to that. And so this is a good way to estimate that, and then you can think about it in your own environment in ways that layering a print management solution on top of your environment can really help drive down those costs and overall time spent on it. What I just showed is on our website, www.tricerat.com. So if you'd like to plug those numbers in, please go to the site and find the printing cost estimator there on tricerat.com. So I've kind of been touching around these points as far as the opportunities for those cost savings. Admin time definitely comes out as number one, where we've gone into so many environments and seen teams of administrators working on printing. And if we can reduce that down to maybe 1 or 2 people part-time dealing with printing, the efficiency gains there and the ability to free up time to focus on the other initiatives within the infrastructure can really be a great enhancement to the IT team. We also look at help desk call reduction and ways that can be time savings. And the help desk calls go on both sides. That's part of your admin team, but also users are on the phone during that time. And if we can get users to be more effective in their printing and have the right printer at the right time for where they are, then that's not a help desk call. That's not a loss of productivity for them. So we'll be looking here at login time improvements, but then also just being able to reduce the amount of times that they need to call that help desk and lose out on that productivity. Good, so I want to kind of dive into some more of the specifics here and how we achieve some of those things with the print management solution. And it's really this tool set that we're looking at layering on top of your environment, and then the advantages that we can derive from a print management solution that's running in your enterprise environment. So we're going to look at mobile printing. We'll look at the cloud printing, particularly with WVD. And then, like we talked about earlier, the elimination of driver management, and then also policy elimination. So let's start with policy elimination and ways that we can effectively do that. A common way to manage printing now from a variety of different ways would be through policy management or group policy management for deploying printers out onto your VDI, onto Citrix, even physical desktops, really across the environment. Well, certainly as that scales up and as you have more and more complexity in those GPOs, they really become increasingly difficult to manage from just initial deployments all the way to just the day-to-day. And maybe a new administrator comes in and has to figure out the ways that the GPOs are structured and what's where for as far as printers to users or devices, it really becomes a big hassle. And so Tricerat's print solution has, it's database driven, so it's a database backend and a real easy drag and drop GUI that's built for managing printers and assigning printers from print servers and other network locations to users and devices. So we've really optimized the ease of assigning those printers, and then on the day-to-day management, seeing what printers are delivered to what users, giving them self-service options, really the full gamut of what you need to do to manage printing, but in a purpose-built management interface that's not GPOs. There's also performance enhancements that come with this. So every time there's a login, there's the GPO processing. And so if we can remove the printing part from that GPO processing, there's often opportunity for some substantial time savings at each login. I mentioned we're database driven, so we have a very quick query that goes out to the database, which is obviously meant to handle that kind of traffic. The query comes back with the printer that should be assigned for that user, and then the information about the printer, and everything then is there and ready to go for the login process. And we're not going to block the login, it's going to keep on going. So the user gets their application as quickly as possible along with their printer. So this login time improvement could be a real savings for each user that's logging into that environment if they don't have to do that GPO processing. And then of course the flexibility here, when you're talking about policies, you're obviously talking about only things that are layered directly into that session. So they log in, they get the printers, and that's it. With our solution, you can certainly do that, but you can also grant users access to printing through a self-service program that's installed on each desktop. And so a user can go in there, access a list or see a map of where the printers are, and quickly and easily within their session, add a printer into their environment or into their remote desktop session and have it instantly available. Besides just having those productivity improvements, that's not a help desk call where they have to call in and request a certain printer. They have access to everything they need from right there within the session. So again, time savings on both the administrator side and the user side. Now, driver elimination. This was #1 in our poll, and it's something that is commonly a pain point for administrators. This could be physical desktops, of course, where you have to manage getting drivers out onto each desktop. But a real pain comes in when you're talking about VDI, and when you have to open up images, you have a gold image or maybe a few gold images, and you have to manage what drivers are getting into those images. And then when new versions come out or there's an update or a new printer, you have to go back into that master image, re-add those drivers. It really becomes just a hassle. You know, it's something that can be done, but it takes time. So with a print management solution, we take all of that driver hassle off your plate. So you need the driver in one place, which would either be a print server, or if it's not a print server environment, we can load the driver into the database. And then from there on, Tricerat will take care of getting the driver out to where it needs to be. If it's VDI, as the VDI is spinning up, our virtual driver has everything necessary already loaded in and ready to go, and print queues can be built. And so you don't have to, there's not even a network copy or anything involved with getting anything additional onto that VDI instance as it's spinning up. And this applies even to physical desktops or terminal servers or whatever platform you have. We have everything necessary within our database to deliver the printers and the print queues out to those end user sessions. So you're not dealing with the driver deployment at all. Obviously, you can think about the parts of your day dealing with print drivers, you know, around the environment. And if we can take that completely off the place, move it off your plate, move it to a single place for you to manage, obviously a huge possibility for efficiency gains.
Okay, we do have a couple questions, if we can. The first question, and both of these are from Reggie, is the first question was, is there one print queue for all of the printers, or is there individual queues?
Yeah, so our virtual driver will be delivering individual queues out for those users. So if you have, you know, a few different printers that you assign to a user, they're going to see those printers. You can manage their defaults, but it will show up like the normal printing interface in Windows.
Okay. And the second question was, is it one driver used for all devices?
In the case of our virtual driver, yes. And I just put up another bullet point there as far as that login performance with virtual drivers. So that one driver, which is our what we call the screwdrivers driver, is everything necessary to mimic all other all other drivers. So it can be from any manufacturer, regular printer, label printer. We deal with all of those. We do have technology, I do want to mention here, to stream the native interface for that printer to the user. So even though it's our one generic, I'll say, driver, that virtual driver, if it's a Lexmark, you'll see a Lexmark dialog. If it's a Xerox, you'll see the Xerox dialog. So the user still has full capabilities, but it's just that one driver. I kind of skipped over the point of the fact that we can load drivers into our database. So if your environment is best suited for like a direct IP scenario without print servers, then we wouldn't be using that virtual driver, but you can load any driver, any Windows driver out there into our database, and then we'll manage that out to the endpoint it needs to get to. Hopefully that answers the questions. Certainly, if there's follow-ups, please let me know.
Yeah, we do. How are the? He says the question was, how are tray call issues handled?
Tray, like printer trays, I guess.
Yes, I would imagine. Is that correct, Reddy?
Yeah. So
yes. Yeah.
The normal user interface, when they go to print, they can pick the tray from there. It would be kind of just the same as they normally print. If you're talking from the administrator side, there's a couple ways. One is you can set the tray defaults on the print server, and then we'll manage getting those through to the user. The other way is that we do save the what I'll call like the device capabilities. Basically, as the user interacts with the printers, we can save that so that the next time they log in, those same properties will still be used. So in other words, if they change the tray, the next time it will still be, the setting that they had previous.
Okay, and we had another question was from Greg, is what is the management platform? Is it cloud-based? Does it require server, VM, etc.?
Yeah, good. So the central piece is the SQL database. And I have a slide about cloud in a little bit where we can show that could be a cloud database or local, or could be wherever. But that's the main driving piece, where the configuration information and the centralized component is that Microsoft SQL Server. And it comes with the full capabilities of SQL Server, so clustering or mirroring or any of those technologies work fine. From there, you have the agents. So you have the simplified printing agent on any desktop that we're managing the print queues. If you have print servers, there's a print server agent to interact there. And so basically, wherever you're running the desktops, if it's cloud-based or local, you would have our agent installed where those Windows desktop sessions are. The management console, which I think might have been part of his question, is a Windows app. So that would get installed on some management device, either like a server or an admin desktop. A lot of times companies will put that on a particular desktop and then publish it as an application for use.
Okay, and then we have a couple more questions have come in. Troy is asking, how is the screwdriver solution better than the Citrix Universal Print Driver?
So there's a few different ways. So and there's a little bit of nuance. So the screwdriver's driver, what he may be asking is for client printing. So like the UPD takes client printers and maps them up to the remote server. And obviously a part of our printing is that, where there's a client that's installed on the local desktop, and then when you log into your Citrix session, we'll take the printing. So that's the similar product feature as far as the piece of our product to the UPD. One of the big things is that over the years, and I've talked about doing this for 20 years, we've developed our own printing protocol. We call it TMF, and it's purpose built for this kind of remote desktop printing. So we can achieve a maximum amount of compression. We can handle encryption and other things through the channel, and really just fidelity of the print job, making it exactly right. And this is what our engineers do day in and day out to make sure those print jobs are identical to what you'd get on a native printout. So when it comes to that kind of client printing, a lot of times the question is, what's working now or not working with the UPD. A lot of times that's a pretty good first step solution, but you can achieve better print output with our solution and smaller print jobs and that sort of thing. Now, a lot comes in play as soon as you talk about the management pieces, and that's where you get into our management console, print server, or serverless printing, the ease of management through that. And that's where a lot of those time savings and so on comes from. But hopefully that kind of talks a little bit to the technical capabilities of the driver, but then also the value add of our management system on top of that.
Okay, and then Raj has asked, if you're running like Zen app with receiver installed, how does the queue work? Does the driver need to be on the VDA and on the local desktop for desktop printing?
You need our agent wherever you want to manage the print queues. So if the applications are on the VDA, then that's where you would have our agent there so that the queues are built and presented to the user in that session. You don't necessarily need it on your local desktop unless you are running local applications and you also want to manage the print queues on that local desktop. So the answer is depends on what the scenario is. Hopefully that's kind of enough of an answer to clue you in, but it'll be something great to talk about with our engineers to help architect it for your environment.
Okay, Raj also asked how the driver would see all feature sets for like multifunction printers for stapling, sorting, printer, that kind of.
Yeah, so this is a feature we call APF, Advanced Print Features, and it's really something unique to Tricerat as far as our capability of streaming the user interface of those drivers. So basically, it is what the interface that shows up on the print server, but instead it's streamed over onto the user session. So if that Xerox has stapling and hole punching and everything else, that's what the user's going to see. If it's pin code printing and the other type of security features, that's what they're going to see. So it is one-to-one. And we've spent a lot of time making that as universal as possible. So across the spectrum of different manufacturer and driver types, there's a lot of work that's gone into making sure that the full range of print drivers that you might see out there are covered. And certainly we, every day we're working to evaluate the latest drivers and working with existing customers to make sure that is as full featured as possible.
And lastly, Jason asked, or gave an example. They use the same printer for both prescriptions and plain paper printing, each from different trays. The way they do that is to build two printers with different default drawers. How would you handle that?
I'd handle it the same way. I'd love to talk about this, and I'd probably want to see it, do a screen share and see it in his environment. But the first answer that comes to mind is setting up the two different queues with the two different defaults. Generally, that's easiest for the user because it acts like two printers. They can pick the right one. They don't have to go to an extra screen to pick that tray. So most environments I've worked with, that's how they'd set up that scenario.
I'd imagine check printers probably have to be handled that way too.
Yeah, you don't want your regular print job chewing out those checks. Great.
Okay, that's all we have for now.
Fantastic. Thanks for all the questions. Please keep them coming. We are going to switch gears a little bit, talk about extending that traditional print environment out to a couple different new things, being cloud and mobile. First here with cloud, and this architecture diagram speaks mainly to WVD, but applies really to any type of cloud scenario. And I also want to mention, like with Citrix Cloud, that layer of Citrix Cloud, we've worked with Citrix Ready to make sure our products work in with Citrix Cloud. And one of the tested scenarios was through that Citrix Cloud management with WVD desktops, delivered through there. Our printing solution works perfectly fine in that scenario as well. I mentioned earlier about that SQL Server. So here in this particular case, the SQL Server is running there in Azure along with our license server. And then it's kind of like a regular setup just in the Azure cloud with Simplify Printing installed on the WVD desktops. Now, the piece that comes into play is when we start talking about adapting your on-prem resources to those cloud desktops. And pretty much anytime we're talking about printing, we're talking about hybrid cloud, because obviously you need that physical aspect. You need the printer near where you are with the print job to come out there local to you. So you always have to have that kind of hybrid setup when you're talking about printing. Now, certainly we could do client printing here, where any client printers that you have map up into that remote session. But if you want to do management the same way, we've talked about so many of the advantages of having this kind of management system on-prem, it certainly makes sense to adapt that in when you're dealing with cloud desktops as well. So we have what we call a print server proxy, and we're actually rebranding this to our cloud connector, where you can put one component up in the cloud and one component down here on-prem. The on-prem version actually is polling out to that cloud proxy server. So we do have a port open up there on the Azure VNet, but nothing has changed on the firewall on the local on-prem environment. So very easy to set up. That local print server pulls up to the cloud, and when there's a print job available from one of the cloud desktops, it pulls it down, passes it to the right print server, and then out to the physical printer. In this particular diagram, I have the print server installed on the same server as the proxy, which is fine. But you could also have just one proxy and then multiple print servers behind that, so it can scale out as your environment demands in this scenario. So again, this kind of a setup when you're talking about moving some of your workloads and certainly some of your desktops up in the cloud, this is the way to still bridge the gap, still take advantage of all the management opportunities with the print management system, but also leverage the advantages of desktops in the cloud. Now, similarly, we just talked about ways to take your existing enterprise infrastructure and extend to the cloud. Well, one of those other things is taking your existing infrastructure and extending it into mobile. And so as more and more applications are running on mobile devices, either delivered through Citrix or local, what we developed is a mobile gateway, so a service that will then connect mobile device applications back into your enterprise print environment. So this is a quick demo that walks through an Android interface. It's basically like our user application on Windows, where you can log in with your credentials. You can see assigned printers that the administrator has already assigned to you. You can browse for other available printers out there, add those in dynamically as part of your session, and they'll show up there within the mobile device. So this is Android, but certainly we have an iOS version as well that works with share sheets. And here, now that I have printers built, this all integrates in with the native Android print interface. So I can go from here. I now have a couple printers available to me. I can switch over to a web browser, for instance, to print. And I go to share from this document or this application. And the option available to me is just like in regular Android to go to print. It'll now take me over to the print interface to select a printer, and we'll see here the Tricerat built printer. And again, this is just a regular office printer that I have that doesn't have any special mobile features, but it's now available to me in my Android interface. I can pick it, and then I have options for all of the default print settings from Android. So the number of copies, color, the pages, all the options that you'd expect. And then this message comes from Android just saying that the print job is going to pass through another server, which is our gateway off to your enterprise print server. So a quick demonstration just of how to take existing enterprise printing and extend that out onto your mobile or onto the mobile devices. All right, so hopefully this walked through some of the scenarios that we talked about in the beginning of even some specific ways to really maximize the efficiency of how you deal with printing in your environment day in and day out, ways to make it easier to deploy printing out to users and devices, but then also just that common management, ways to really enhance the user interfaces. We didn't talk about scanning in this presentation, but we do have a scanning solution that works right alongside our printing. And so if it's a scanner on your local desktop that needs to be into your remote application, we have a solution for that that really brings a lot of advantages to like the traditional redirected Twain scenario. And so all of this really wraps into our user management scenarios and capabilities within our products. So I've talked quite a few times about ways that this will layer into an existing environment. So one of the things that we really look at is the easiest way to take what you have existing in your enterprise environment and optimize it. So that might be using existing print servers. It might be reducing or eliminating them. There's a lot of different ways that this solution really gives you flexibility and options within that environment. But the POC process is really simple. On our website, we have downloads available along with 30-day trials where you can put this on just a print server and a few agents, see printers building quite quickly. We have a team of engineers here that really enjoy working with customers directly as far as finding out what your pain points are, what you're looking to improve in the environment, and then ways that the software can adapt and can directly help with those scenarios. So we can offer one-on-one demonstrations, or certainly we would walk with you through that whole POC process to see how that layers directly into your environment. But that's the end of our presentation here as far as those enhanced printing solutions. Rich, do we have any other questions that came in?
We do. Right here coming in towards the end, we're getting a bunch of them. So we'll start with Reggie asked, are the mobile print jobs encrypted?
We do have a layer of encryption that goes in for all traffic between two Tricerat endpoints. Once it gets to the print server, then it's the raw print job out to the printer, but all traffic can be encrypted between the Tricerat clients and servers.
Okay. And then Jason asked, how do you handle location-based printing?
So there's a few different ways. One is that we can make printers assignments to devices, and so that could be like a laptop or a thin client. So when you're connecting into like a remote app, part of your location is your device. So like in a lot of hospital systems, for instance, a thin client might have a printer right next to it, and so anyone that walks up gets a session on that thin client will have that printer. So that's one location element. Certainly for like laptops, as you might be moving between locations, we can assign based on IP range or subnet, and so based on the network location you are, we can assign printers based on that. And then, I didn't show, but we talked about the self-service. Users can set different defaults based on different locations. So if I'm in this office, this is my default. If I move over to office B, I have a different default, and it can track all that for you.
Okay. And then Kimmy asked if there was a agent for Linux devices like the IGEL thin clients.
So at the moment, that is under development. We expect over the next few months to have that Linux client available for IGEL and other thin clients or generic Linux workstations. So that is on the short-term roadmap. So look for announcements for that from us here in the next few months. We do also, I'll quickly add in that we do have a Mac OS X client as well for both managing printers on the OS X device or remote connections from OS X up to Citrix servers.
Okay. And then what type of scanning connectors are available? This is from Reggie.
The scanning basically on the client will interface with any Twain or WIA scanner on your desktop, like the physical connection, and then on the remote session, it presents itself as a Twain device to the scanning application.
And Greg, I think we answered the question about the printing for users that move around. Is that correct? You can let me know if you need to expand on that anymore. Okay, thank you. Also, Reggie asked if you can scan from a multifunction device using the scan solution. So if I've got an MFP printer that does scanning as well, would I use the scanning? Would I need the scanning solution, or does it come with the printing solution? That kind of question.
Yeah, we can sell it as a bundle. It is the scanning solution, and the answer is yes, assuming that on a desktop you have that scanner, available as a scanner on that desktop that you're then connecting to a Citrix session. Just meaning to say, like, you can't go straight from the printer up to the Citrix session. It's got to go through your desktop. But if you have it available as a scanning device, then we can manage it.
Okay. Jared asked, on a global scale, how many printers can you support before needing a second server or additional configs?
Not exactly sure what he means by server. I'm going to assume print server. I've seen scales up to a couple thousand queues on a print server, and frequently used, like print jobs per second. Our service manages both the information about the printers, but also all print jobs go through it. So we've seen much better utilization of print servers when we're managing that print traffic over the regular Windows print spooler with Windows printer shares. I mean, traditionally that maxes out much lower than that, whereas with our server we've seen it up to 2,000, and I think that's what I've seen at max, but that hasn't even been really necessarily a cap. So hopefully that's the server he was asking about. In terms of like the database and the overall system, I mean, we've seen thousands of printers, and it scales up because each agent is operating independently. So it's just a matter of, getting the query to the database and then managing getting the print job from whatever desktop, either to the print server or to the direct IP.
Okay, and then a couple good questions came in. Similar, both Greg and Reggie were asking, how is Tricerat licensed, or what kind of licensing model do you have?
We have some flexibility there. Commonly, we do per user concurrent. That's most commonly done, but we have subscription models if you want to do it on a subscription basis, especially when we start talking about like cloud scenarios. So that can be I think discussed a little more thoroughly directly.
Okay, that's all the questions I have.
Great. I think we do, Stephanie, have one more poll here at the end. So if you'd like for us to schedule a time to follow up more thoroughly, like I said, we love doing these demos where we can do kind of a consultative engineering session, where you can describe a little bit of your environment and we can adapt a demo directly to your environment. Even if you've used simplified printing before and just want to kind of catch up on some of the new features that we've talked about here, and we can certainly schedule a one-on-one. So if you're interested, please check the box on this poll.
And then I'd like to add in, while everybody's doing the voting, the one thing that I've found in the years I've spent in the end user computing space is that the better the experience that your users get or your employees get, the more likely they are to adopt and use and like the thing. So when you were talking earlier about the money savings and stuff like that, it's not always just about that. It's if you can make it usable for your employees, make it easier for them, it's more likely to make you have a successful rollout of your virtual desktops.
All right, so I've closed the poll. I just have a couple of closing slides for everyone, a couple of events, and I'm also putting some links in the chat for you. So there's a link to that survey that I mentioned earlier. It's super quick and anonymous, and then also a link to the CUGC main events calendar, where you'll see some upcoming events in our local groups and our larger day-long events that we call CUGC Excel. We have the next one coming up in Denmark, and then the very next day in San Diego and SoCal, and Tricerat will be at SoCal. So if you're in the San Diego area or within driving distance, it's a great event. You should come on down. And you can find the information through that events link. And then finally, just a reminder to all of you to follow us on Twitter to get the most update information about all our local events, our online events like this webinar. We have tons of stuff going on, so follow at MyCUGC. That's also where you'll find out the winner of the American Express gift card. So for those of you who opted in to potentially win the gift card, that's where you'll find out on Twitter. So do stay tuned to Twitter, and I hope you'll follow us. And with that, I just want to thank everyone for being with us today. And thank you, Andrew, for giving such a great presentation and taking the time to answer all those questions. And thank you to Rich for keeping an eye on those questions for us.
Glad to be a part of it. Thanks.
All right, well, I hope that everyone enjoys the rest of your day, whether it's evening or afternoon or still morning. I hope you all have a great day, and come back to mycugc.org to see us. And again, you will get a recording link for today's presentation in case you need to go back and revisit it. All right, thanks a lot, everybody. I hope you all have a great day.
Thank you, Stephanie.